Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Survival Project. Today we have a milestone episode, episode 10. I did say no matter what, I was going to release 10 episodes, and I can happily tell you that I've actually got 10 more episodes waiting to come. So stay tuned, because 20 episodes will be the next milestone. 10 more powerful stories to share, just like today's episode. So today I'm speaking with Siobhán Cunningham, a lady from Galway who's a single mother who spent 16 years battling stage 4 endometriosis and more recently myocarditis, a condition that left her bedbound after being misdiagnosed for over a year. This is a powerful story of survival, advocacy, and a mother's determination to stay alive for her son. So, let's get into it. So, Siobhan, welcome to the podcast. If you could just dive into your story from diagnosis to now and let listeners know your story.
Hi, thanks for having me. So, my name is Siobhan. I'm from Galway. I'm a single mother to a beautiful child. Callum is fabulous. I have been living with stage 4 endometriosis for 16 years. And in the last 4 years, then I was diagnosed with myocarditis of the heart and POTS syndrome. It's an autonomic condition. What brought me to telling my story was that I felt that I don't believe I would ever be as sick as I am today if there was more awareness, more help, and more structured facilities really in the hospitals. I think that there's always a challenge when it comes to trying to get the help that you need. When you are in more than one field as well, it's even more exhausting because you can put up with a lot with one condition, but when you're trying to do it for 3 conditions, it's exhausting, and then trying to look after your child. I believe that there is a big flaw in the health system in Ireland. I don't think anything has changed. It's really, really difficult when you are living with these rare conditions and then not getting the care that you deserve and then trying to source it while you're sick. So that's been really, really difficult. I was misdiagnosed with the myocarditis of the heart. So basically you only get myocarditis from a virus or an infection. And at the time I had a surgery for my third surgery for endometriosis, and unskilled. See, in Ireland, there's not a lot of skilled surgeons to perform endometriosis surgery, but the only way to get rid of the endometriosis is to remove it through excision surgery. And there isn't really anybody in Ireland. There's people that are knowledgeable on it, but there isn't really any specialists in Ireland. About 4 years ago, I went to the hospital for surgery because of pain and excruciating pain, basically. So I went in for the surgery in the February of my home, and everything kind of went really, really difficult after that. And even the care, like if you even go into Ireland for a surgery, the care and the follow-up afterwards doesn't exist. There's no care plan. There's no follow-ups. It's really, really difficult. You're waiting a couple of years to get the surgery, and then when you do get it, it's normally done through a day procedure, and then you're out within a couple of hours. And this time I was kept in because of the perforated wound, but I never recovered after it to this day, 4 years later, because all the complications came after that. I got an infection, and then that was around the time COVID kind of locked down Ireland, the world really. And then I started collapsing. My heart, I used to wake up in the middle of the night, my heart beating maybe 200 plus beats per minute. I think the highest they recorded was 240 beats per minute. And remember, a resting heartbeat shouldn't pass 60 to 80 beats per minute. And when I was sitting down doing nothing, my heart was doing 240 beats per minute. And it took them a year and a half to diagnose me with myocarditis. Again, because the services weren't available in Galway. I wasn't listened to, I wasn't believed because I had complications with the surgery. They're trying to put it down to that. They're trying to say that I was a single mother, and that the stress of my life basically is probably the result of why I am anxious. They kept putting it down to anxiety and panic attacks, and nobody's listening to me. I kept collapsing. I broke my nose. I fractured my arm from falls because when I used to stand up, my blood pressure used to drop a lot, and I was collapsing because if you know anything about the heart, if your heart is doing over 200 beats per minute, your body needs to shut down to calm it down. So unfortunately, I had to keep advocating for myself while I was really, really sick. And while I was trying to advocate for myself, I was deteriorating. The more I was deteriorating, I ended up being bedbound, unfortunately, for about a year and a half. But I kept fighting for myself, and I got a cardiac MRI in Dublin, and that's where I was diagnosed with myocarditis. So again, I don't know if it's a female thing or what it is, but I know a guy that went into hospital for 3 days. He was diagnosed within 3 days of myocarditis. And I find that if a man goes in with the same symptoms as a woman, especially with the heart, they are seen a lot quicker and believed a lot quicker because, like in our society, if a man presents with symptoms, there's something wrong. But when a woman presents with symptoms, it could be hormones, stress, anxiety, being a single parent, being a single mother. All these factors come against you. But if a man went in with the same symptoms as me, they will be looked after better. And that's even another challenge in itself, being a female with cardiovascular conditions. So that's what led me to start advocating for CRE in Galway. I came on board with them because they were the only people that really helped me. And I found myself in a really good, kind community, and I felt really safe there. But then I needed rehab, and I wasn't available in Ireland. So then I had to go to London, and then try to get funding for that is next to impossible. So I found that the whole system is designed not for sick patients. It's designed for a business. And that's why I started to speak out. It wasn't my intention to speak out, but when you come through like a perforated womb, liver with endometriosis for 16 years and nothing has changed, not one treatment is available now than it was 16 years ago. There's no aftercare. There's no care plan for women in Ireland. Nothing had changed there. Perforated womb, misdiagnosed with a heart condition that left me bedbound. And then having to go to London for rehab because I wasn't available in Ireland. And then to go to London, I needed to get the funding form signed, and it was next to impossible to get that signed because, again, it's designed for a business, not for a patient who's already struggling. And I think even with my son at the time, he had his tonsillectomy. It wasn't sealed correctly, and I brought him to the hospital twice that day, and he ended up being blue lighted to the hospital. The reason why was because twice that day, I had brought him to his own doctor and then another out-of-hours doctor, and they both had said he was fine. He was 2 weeks post tonsillectomy, and he was sent home. And about an hour after he was sent home the second time, he was projectile vomiting in the bed. And until I turned on the light, it was covered in blood. So he was blue lighted into hospital. The ambulance driver wouldn't even let me put on my shoes. He took pictures of the blood just to show them how bad it was in Galway hospital. And I never seen him as quiet. I'll never forget holding him in my arms. The whole way into Galway. My son is a really lively child, and he never opened his mouth. And he was continuously projectile vomiting all over my face and all over my neck. And by the time he had gone into Galway hospital, he just took him off me in Galway and told me they'd do the best they could, and I had to sit outside on the floor with no shoes on, covered in blood, for 4 hours until they came back to me. It's just being too hard. Like even this summer, my son was limping for weeks, and he had to wait 4 weeks for an X-ray. And then he went in for his X-ray, and we just got out to the car, and the doctor had rang us. He said something showed up in the X-ray, and it was a little mass at the back of his knee, and he had to be readmitted into the hospital. And he was told he needed an emergency MRI. He was admitted on a Friday, and because the hospital only runs Monday to Friday, 9:30 to 5 for any scans, he had to wait. And he was 6 days in the hospital before he got a scan. And every morning they used to cancel the scan. By the time it came to the Tuesday morning, I was convinced that he had cancer because nobody was telling me any different. People were just coming into the room saying he needs the scan, but they weren't giving it to him. And as the days went on, anyone that would do that, they would be convinced that their child was very, very sick. And I had to phone a minister at the time, Sean Cunningham, and he got my son's MRI within an hour. So it can be done if the right people are fighting for you, but it shouldn't be the way it should be. It should be just automatically there for you. So because the whole system has let me down is the reason why I started telling my story, because I don't believe anything would change unless people do start telling their story. And it's not an easy thing to do. You put yourself out there, and you put yourself out there in quite a vulnerable state as well. But I think it's really, really important.
I don't know where to start. That is some story. My God, like your experience of the healthcare system is awful. It's harrowing. There's no other words for it. You're absolutely navigating a minefield with your own health issues, and then your son to go through what he went through. My God, like it's torture. There's no other word for it, and it shows a lot of glaring holes, unfortunately, in the system that we have at the minute. So how I came across your story was originally the TikTok video, and it went viral. I think got over 100,000 views. When you started speaking so openly online, do you feel that triggered a response that might instigate some change, or do you feel there has to be a lot more work to do yet?
When I did that TikTok, I had no intention of anything really coming out about it. At that time, I was quite vulnerable. I couldn't believe I was back in the same situation as I was, not getting help. I had received an apology from the hospital that February from the cardiologist who misdiagnosed me. And I had the opportunity to go further with it or sue the hospital. And I chose not to. I chose to sit down, tell this cardiologist the impact she had in my life. At the end of the day, I had to make a will because I was convinced that I was going to die before they diagnosed me, because I'm a single parent. And when she really, really realised the impact she had on me, she was quite emotional. I said to her, do you realise that my son was 6 years of age, phoning an ambulance because I was collapsing and you were sending me back home to that child? And I said to her that, do you realise that I became so bedbound because you failed to diagnose me that it took me a year to come back from that. So I lost 3 years of my life. I can never, ever get them back. But for me, I thought there was more of a lesson to learn than getting money or anything else out of it, which I had believed. So you would expect after going through all that and getting an apology from the hospital that your care would be better. And I couldn't believe that when I went back in with my son just to get an MRI that isn't available, to beg for one, just to make sure my son was fine. And then 3 months later again, after a major surgery in Dublin Hospital, to get the same bare minimum care. So I think after that, I was just done. I was exhausted because if a doctor has to send me in now to Galway, I'll never go there again. I don't think I'll ever go there again through emergency services because every time I go in there, they take a piece away from me that I don't think I'll ever get back. I'll never forget sitting in the corridor for those 6 days. Like, I didn't speak to anyone for 2 weeks after that because I wasn't able. And that is that's really the truth of, and it's not just one occasion, it's multiple occasions. And I think then when I did decide to do the video, I was quite in a vulnerable situation. And I think I was quite frightened that something was severely going to progress with me because I had no faith in the hospital because of what they had done to me before. And it did frighten me, the fact that when I walked in the door, it was so packed. There was no chairs available. And I was going to go home, but then I was too sick and I felt so much pain that I didn't think I was better off going home than staying. But when I sat and did the video, I think I was a little bit more broken than I was previous to that because I couldn't believe I'd asked 2 nurses. The first nurse was the triage nurse. She said, please don't put me back sitting on a chair. I asked the second nurse manager an hour and a half later. I said, I'm physically not able to be here. Can you please let me lie down? And I was told, no, I had to wait 6 more hours. So I think when I did the TikTok video, I was quite vulnerable. I didn't really think it was going to go anywhere, but it was very honest and raw. And I think that's why it captured so many people, because I wasn't the only person that has ever experienced this. And since the story has been told 2 weeks ago, the amount of people that has contacted me, because at the end of the day, it may not be themselves, but their mother, their brother, their sister, somebody is connected to a really bad experience in the hospital where somebody has been left really, really ill or died or not looked after correctly. And I think that's why the story travelled as far as it did.
Absolutely. Like, it's just to go through what you went through previously and then to actually be put back into the same place again in such a vulnerable state and not to be listened to all over again. Like, that's traumatizing. To have to go and lie in your car when you're in such a vulnerable position, like, it's just not good enough. There's
I
no
couldn't
other word for it.
understand them that when they did eventually see me, they knew my history. They knew I was misdiagnosed in this hospital. They knew what I'd bedbound. They knew I had perforated womb. They knew what I had been through, but the care was still like the bare minimum. You would think that's knowing medically what it's like to have myocarditis. You'll know that this woman has struggled severely. And then to go in and just be like they didn't care. Like they actually factually didn't care. When I did eventually get seen, they had sent me for an chest X-ray. I said, "Why are you sending me for a chest X-ray?" She goes, "Well, sometimes you can get an infection and you can get pneumonia in the bottom of your lung. So I think maybe you have pneumonia in the bottom of your lung that's giving you the abdomen pain." And I said, "Well, I have no symptoms of pneumonia. It didn't make sense to me." And I didn't. The chest X-ray came back clear. So for me, I just thought I got a very junior doctor for a very senior case. So I had asked them to see a senior doctor and I was told I was ruled. And then it eventually came down that my care was finished and that they were sending me home. So I still went home the same way I came in and it was put down to normal post-op care. And for me at that time, I had got major surgery on St. James's. So it was for endometriosis again. It was only to go in for a cyst removal because I had a big cyst on my left ovary and it was endometrioma, not a simple cyst. Simple cysts that disappear, but endometriosis that keep growing. And I had severe back pain for a full year. And I had to really fight for this surgery because the abdomen pain and the back pain, I was bent over with it. So to even fight to get the surgery. And then the doctor that seen me at the time told me that it was probably PMS and he was trying to give me antidepressants because he said that's the first line of treatment for PMS because I couldn't get HRT. And I said, "There's no ocean." I said, "I want the surgery." So to even fight to get the surgery, and I went down on a Wednesday morning and I was told I'd be about a half an hour and didn't come back around for 4 hours. And I knew I was there long because I looked up at the clock and he said the surgery was a lot more extensive than it had to be. I had endometriosis on my liver, my spleen, my abdomen wall, my diaphragm, my pelvic area. They'd separate my bowel from my abdomen wall. And the cyst that he said would be fine was actually starting to rupture. So it was rupturing, and that's why I had the severe pain. So it was rupturing into my abdomen wall. and it basically was like sticking to all my organs. So the biggest thing they had to do then was try and detach my ovary from all the organs. He came to me afterwards, the surgeon, he says to me, he goes, I can see why you had all your symptoms. And for me, it baffled me because I'm paid for. I was down as having stage 4 severe endometriosis, but he still didn't believe my symptoms until he actually physically seen it himself. So until he went in with laparoscopy and seen how bad my insides were, he didn't believe me. And I had said to him afterwards, I said, well, you changed your tune pretty fast because you wanted to give me an antidepressant. And imagine how bad I would have been if I left it. So that's the surgery I had. And they sent me home after one day from Dublin down to Galway. And then I spent every day for the next 3 weeks going in and out of my GP with different complications. So it was the most horrific surgery I went through. But again, if I was given the proper aftercare, if I was admitted for the hospital for at least 4 or 5 days, given the care I needed, any complications that would have arisen, it would have been dealt with in St. James's instead of trying to go back out to the system. So it's really designed, I don't know, for healthy people, because I don't think it's designed for people that are quite vulnerable and sick, because there's nothing there available. And I don't think anybody should be sent home after major surgery a couple of hours afterwards. So yeah, I think I've been failed a lot over the years. I even seen it myself with my own mother. My mother had her womb removed in her 30s, and she actually died when she was young from leukemia. So even as a teenager, I had seen how severely affected my mother was from the healthcare system, and nothing had changed since. Like even with my son could have died that day because 2 doctors sent him home and didn't believe me. I don't know if I feel lucky that we are alive considering what we've been through, but I also feel very unlucky that the situations, if we had a proper healthcare system in Ireland where we were really looked after, none of these situations would have happened. So I'm not going to stop telling my story in the sense that I believe that unless we keep speaking out and getting accountability, I don't think anybody is going to make the situation any different. I think a lot of people in government are there, but they haven't lived a day on what it's like to live with a chronic condition. And they're trying to run the HSE and the hospitals. They actually haven't a clue what it's like to be on the other side of it. So I think the wrong people are in management and the wrong people are in government when it comes to a lot of situations that if me or you done it, considering the life we'd had, we'd have a different approach to it.
Clearly, I think the value of lived experience is often underappreciated, and I definitely
Even
think
a little bit of
collaboration.
empathy as well. Like, and empathy goes a long way. To sit, I never look for anyone to feel sorry for me, but I fully believe if people had a little bit more empathy and a little bit more time for people to listen to them and believe them, I think that would be the first change that we can see.
Empathy is from speaking to so many people and from some of my own personal experience, empathy is massively lacking in the healthcare system. And I think that would be one of the first steps in bridging the gap that's missing between medical professionals and the people who are suffering with the issues that are arising in their lives. And I think that would be the first place to start, is obviously trying to have practitioners put themselves in our shoes and understand what we're actually going through, so that they don't maybe disregard, like unfortunately has happened in your case. What you were saying was disregarded until, as you said, it was physically seen. No one knows their body like the person who's experiencing it. And that is something that definitely needs to change, is that there's just that more empathy to sit and say, okay, this person is experiencing something. Let's look a little bit more into it besides just disregarding it as you've experienced. That's horrible. And I'm so sorry to hear about your mother. Like, your life has been shaped by health and subsequently the healthcare system, which is absolutely just, your family's been tormented, which is, I'm sorry to hear.
A lot of people understand why I spoke out, but some people don't, because again, they've never been in hospital, they've never lost anybody, and they've never lived a day how I've had to live. Like the way I am now, it's like, tell me your story before I tell you mine. Because I believe truly that unless you've lived even a day like I have lived, you're not going to understand. I think that's one thing I've learned very fast, is that don't expect people to have your mindset or have your empathy or understand what you're going through. And I think once you accept that, it makes your life a little bit easier, for sure. And I think when I got sick first, I couldn't understand why more people weren't helping me, more people weren't believing me, and more people weren't stepping up. But at the end of the day, you learn pretty fast. And I think that's how I live my life now. I don't allow people to have an opinion that haven't lived a day. And you can't criticize somebody if they want to speak out, if they want to spread awareness and do well for themselves, because the end of the day, I never wanted to be the person in the failed system. I never wanted to be the person that had these conditions, and I never wanted to be the person that lived all these traumas from a failed system. So that is the way it is now. I can do nothing about it, but I certainly want to do something as we go forward, because my son is young now, and I certainly don't want him to go through what I went through going forward. And I do believe if people still have the courage to tell their story, something will definitely have to change, for sure.
Completely, and it's absolute cause and effect. Like, if you hadn't experienced, unfortunately, what you've experienced, you wouldn't have to be here today speaking to me. So it's a brilliant thing that you do after everything you've gone through. You speak so well, you get your point across, and it's just such an unfortunate thing that you have to be here today to say this. From the reaction of your TikTok video and your own advocacy work, has there been much over and back between, I suppose, the people in the positions that can actually instigate change?
I did an interview last week with Galway FM. The response for that was unbelievable. And that is great. But you want the response from people that can make the change as well. So the support has been brilliant, because I think when you are living with these conditions, the support isn't always there and the understanding isn't there. When it comes to the management out of Galway Hospital, they still haven't contacted me. They've acknowledged my complaint, but they haven't contacted me yet. And that's probably 3 weeks now. They have a month to respond. When it comes to the ministers and TDs and the senators I've contacted, some of them, you just got the same copy and paste response I got a year ago. It passed it down. So it was passed down from the Taoiseach's office down to the Minister for Health and then down to the HSE. And because a lot of these issues arisen a year previous, they won't investigate. So you have 1 year to investigate something serious that happened to you. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense, because the year that I could have investigated, I was bedbound because of your doctor. And then you're trying to tell me that I have to be well enough in that year to come and make a complaint, and you're not even going to look at it. And there is special exceptions there where they will agree to look at it, and they still refuse that. So where do you go? Like, I went to the highest, I've gone to the Taoiseach, passed it down, and then they're saying it's a year. And that's why when I did meet Simon Harris a year ago, I put it to him. I talked to him and I told him, and he promised me he'd look into it. But a lot of it is talk. It depends on who you're getting on the other side. I have met some TDs that have done really well for me, ministers, because they know what it's like through their parent or somebody else, and they know what the system's like. That's the door you need to be knocking on. The people that have no clue in government what it's like the other side, or don't even care about it, they're not the people that you need to be contacting them. But they still need to be made accountable. Minister for Health needs to respond to the emails that sent her, because at the end of the day, she's a year in the job. If she can't make any change or look into the hospitals or look into A&E, who can? I don't have a lot of faith in the ministers at the moment, but there is some that are going to meet with me next week. So we'll see where that goes. But it's something that some people are interested in, and some people are just passing it on to somebody else. And that's the way it is, I think, with anything. It's, if you have an interest in it, or you have some family member affected by it, then you will show interest, but otherwise.
Yeah, there's often that lack of empathy, of course, from the lack of lived experience. And if you are someone who has, whether it's yourself or a family member who's seen how life-destroying health complications can be, at least you can have an understanding of the vulnerability and the pain that it causes. But I think, as you said, when there's people in positions to instigate change who have no idea of what these experiences are like, obviously there's no empathy, so there's no rush to make these changes. So definitely there has to be a massive change in approach. Listening to the people who know what they're talking about, who've lived in this system that is just failing people every day, which is unfortunate. Like, the system is completely
I'd like
overrun.
to see the manager of the hospital or the Minister for Health or the Taoiseach come and sit with me in A&E for 15 hours with no water, no food, and nobody looking after you, and quite sick. Like, I'd like to see them do that, and I don't think they would do it for 15 hours. Come and sit with me. That's what I would invite them to do, and see what we are putting through. Like, so, but I don't think they would do it, to be fair. It would just go to show that, like, if it's put to them, you come and sit with me, like, and see the shambles of the healthcare system that we're getting here. I have been to London and I've been to France, and it's embarrassing to come back here and see what we're putting up with. I went to London for a week. I was admitted for a week to get quite extensive testing for the autonomic condition I have. And again, I wouldn't have had the autonomic condition if I wasn't bedbound and the virus hadn't kind of attacked my body. So my conditions are caused by the lack of care, yet there is no extra help for that. So it just baffles me in the sense that, like, I lost my job. I worked as a manager in a hotel. I had a really good job. I hadn't worked in 4 years. And then even to get the disability here in Ireland, I got failed 3 times because you had to prove that your disability was still going to be there in a year's time. And that's the criteria for it. I just feel everything is designed for healthy people. It's just crazy.
Obviously, health issues, like as you said, you were living life, you had a good job, you were well able to look after yourself, you know, and then you've been burdened by these issues which have been exacerbated by the failings of the health system. And then to think that you can't get the support to try and live life, look after yourself, look after your son. Like, there's a massive financial burden that comes with health issues, and, you know, healthy people don't have to spend money on making themselves better, and they still have the same expenses that me or you have on top of it. It's a glaring look at our healthcare system and how it is failing people on a daily basis. As you said, you have experience of going to London, you have experience of going to France. Why can't we carbon copy what's going on in other countries? Why is it so hard to, you know, why can we not look at put up a mirror and say, right, what are they doing right and where are we going wrong? I just don't understand why there's not more simple fixes to some of the small problems which could instigate big fixes on a bigger scale. I suppose from your experience of going abroad and seeing other healthcare systems, what things do you see implemented straight away that you think could be implemented here very easily that could make real change?
The one thing I noticed the minute I got approved the funding here is I had an appointment in 3 weeks in the hospital. Within 3 weeks, I couldn't believe it. I thought I would be waiting months. So within 3 weeks, the secretary contacted me straight away. Even the empathy that the secretary had. If you try and even ring the secretary's ears, you don't have to fight with them before you get appointments or anything like that. And then I was offered to bring my son. So they knew I was a single mother. So they offered to also bring my son, which I did. And in the hospitals there was volunteers that took Callum for a couple of hours every day while I was getting the testing. They intervened straight away and give you the support you needed in the hospital. And I thought that even alone was amazing. But even the doctors, the way they approach patients, the way they speak to them, just the whole setup was just amazing. I came home thinking I wanted to move to London just for the whole healthcare because of how you were treated. Because when you are living with a chronic condition, you're quite vulnerable in Ireland, I think, and knowing that you can go into the hospital and give them 4 symptoms and they haven't a clue what you have. But you could go to London and give them their 4 symptoms and they can explain in detail why it's there, what can help you, and how you can live your life the new normal way. But in Ireland, you're told to go home and drink water. The amount of doctors that told me to drink water like it was the Holy Grail and it was going to cure me, I was literally baffled by it because I suffer really low blood pressure. And then I remember one time, one doctor really annoyed me. Don't drink more water, your blood pressure is... My heart was sky high and my blood pressure was low. And I was so weak, but nothing stopped me going down to the canteen and buying as many bottles of water as I could. And I emptied them just to leave them on the table. So the next time he came in, he couldn't come and drink more water. I don't know. It just used to annoy me that their approach is quite, I don't know, embarrassing in some instances that you wouldn't get that in London. They might tell you to add salt into your water or drink electrolytes and a little bit of extra sodium or sodium salt. But it's not the reason. You're not going to be dehydrated and have a heart rate of 200 something beats per minute. There's something seriously wrong. It baffled me sometimes with the responses. And I think now I'm like a bit of a smart arse when I go into the doctors because some of the stuff they come out with is just like my son had an appointment recently with orthopedics because he had the broken tibia. And the doctor came in and he pulled across the curtain and he was like, "Hello, how are you doing today?" My son eye rolls like, we do laugh at each other because he knows, well, oh, mom's going to kick off here now because of the way he's speaking to him. And he just said, I said, "Is it annoying?" He goes, "No, Mom, I love it." Because I've had to learn really, really fast how to talk to a doctor, how to stick up for yourself and not get thrown out the door with very little done. And the way he spoke to Callum, and I tried to keep quiet as much as I could. I was trying to just ignore him. And then for a finish, he said, "What planet are you on?" I said, "To speak to my child the way you're speaking to him." I said, "He's 10 years of age." He was saying that everything was fine. And then I said, "You go and you read his notes," because he didn't even know I was there. Didn't even know he had a broken tibia. Didn't know why he had the broken tibia. And he even asked me, "Why did he get his MRI?" And I thought, if you don't know this information, you've no business standing in front of me. So within 5 minutes, the consultant came back around and he apologized. And he said, "Siobhan, there's still something on his MRI. We have to get another one in 6 weeks' time." And it was a completely different approach to the other lad that came in. But I didn't mean to speak in the sense that, like, what planet are you on to come in here, not read the notes or to speak to my son the way you're speaking to him. But it's just, if I didn't, another consultant wouldn't have come in. So I don't know. I laugh about it sometimes because you nearly had to be ready to fight the minute you go into appointments to get listened to and heard. And I wasn't always like that. And maybe it's not the most respectful way to speak to a doctor, but it's the way I had to be because of the failings that I had. And even when somebody gives me a diagnosis now, I always question it because I have to, because of how we've been treated. It definitely has impacted how I see doctors. I don't allow them away with a lot. And a lot of them doctors ask me now, am I in the medical field because I haven't speak to them? And I was like, no, I'm just an experienced patient that has been failed. And that's basically the way it is. But I don't know if that will ever change, but my son gets a good laugh out of it. But it also wants to teach my son that he needs to advocate for himself in every aspect of life, in school, even in home or in the doctors, that you have to be able to stick up for yourself, because if you don't, you can be failed and get a misdiagnosis and be treated unfairly. It definitely changed the way I view doctors and the healthcare system in Ireland. I'm not a nasty, rude person or anything like that. I definitely feel that you have to be ready to fight to get your message across in those 10 minutes that you're sitting across with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes our reaction is from a previous action of someone else, and then maybe someone who just comes in gets the brunt of it, and then you nearly have to pull yourself back a little, being like, okay, but the reason you are acting or reacting in the way you have is because of something that's happened. Like, I don't think any of us are nasty at the core, and when we go into hospital, we're so vulnerable, and then to be not listened to and to be experiencing all these problems, you're going to hit boiling point and you're going to burst, and then you might react, and then unfortunately that might actually impact how serious they take you as well, because they might say, oh, I'm not going into her now, she's just going to give out to me. But the reason you are obviously having to give out and advocate for yourself is because no one's listening before. So it just seems to be a domino effect of problems that keep coming and coming and coming. And I will, like, of course we see what happens in A&E. They are completely overworked and rushing and running. Like, the whole system is just designed for failure. And obviously there are so many failings. What message?
I've never had an issue with a paralytic. A lot of the times when I went in and I got collected and quite vulnerable, quite sick, the care was phenomenal. But the care often stopped the minute I got out of the back of the ambulance. And even the nurses, I have to say, there is rarely a story I have to tell where a nurse didn't support me or help me. In fact, nurses, once the doctors had left in some situations, had told me to go to Cree, actually, and that's where I went to get the support I needed. And then we're losing a lot of our nurses here as well. But I have to say, I've never been coming away from a situation with a paramedic or a nurse where I felt I wasn't looked after. So you'd wonder why it doesn't stretch the whole way around. It doesn't make any sense that when you go in then to the hospitals, the care stopped on many occasions for me.
I can safely say that my experience with nurses in the hospital, they have been so caring and so helpful. And unfortunately, every single nurse that I speak to is like, oh, I'm going to Australia in 3 months, or oh, I'm going to England in 3 months. You know, so we do have a mass exodus of our health professionals, which is just terrible, and it's already causing more problems on an overburdened system. But why would you stay here when you're not respected? Which is a message I hear a lot, and you're not fortunately getting paid your worth and all the other things that come with it. You can understand why they go, but unfortunately that causes so much more problems, which falls back then on the patients like us who aren't receiving the care that they might need in these situations. It's just a constant roundabout of problems that keep manifesting.
90% of the nurses in Ireland now are immigrants or Indians, and I don't care about that. I don't care who treats me as long as you look after me. But there definitely is a big language barrier. And there's also an issue with the medication as well. You see that, like, I remember after the surgery, I'd said I can't take this particular medication, and I kept being offered it for the rest of the day. So I was a bit baffled by that. But it's sad to see it gone to that, because there isn't hospitals filled with Irish nurses. But it's something that still isn't addressed either, and then it's kind of brushed off while you are getting seen by somebody. Isn't that the main thing? I don't care who diagnoses me or who treats me, as long as I get the care I need. But there is a big issue there, I believe as well, that we don't have Irish nurses and doctors in there.
Language barrier is a massive problem. I remember in one instance of my own, I was having intestinal blockages. I'd been in and out of A&E. Probably this was my second time coming in the space of a month. And I went in, I tried to explain to the person at the desk who had very little English. They couldn't understand what I was saying. I'm trying to explain where I need to go, what I need, and that just adds another problem on top. And I understand that, you know, people, thank God we have some skilled workers coming in to the nurses that we need to help our system. But when there is a problem with the language barrier, it can be detrimental to you getting the help that
Secondly,
you need.
I had to spell my conditions. I had to spell my name. I had to spell my Do you know what I mean? If they can't even spell your name, are they putting you in the right system? I don't know. It's one small part of it, but it's still a part of the overall system that we're living in.
It's just a lot of little problems dotted all along that are causing massive
Yeah.
big problems. Unfortunately, the system is so overburdened.
When you have that lived experience, it carries, doesn't it? And you have a lot of empathy. And the reason why I'm telling my story is not for myself. It's not for fame. It's for a change in the system for everybody. You're always thinking of somebody else, I think, as well. So
you become very empathetic of everyone else's stories because you know how much it hurts. And like that's one of the main reasons why I started speaking on social media, was that what's the point of me internalizing all this experience that I have when all I have to do is turn on a camera, speak it, and whether it instigates any change or not in the healthcare system, it might instigate some change in someone else's life to make their burden a little bit less. So I think that's an amazing thing to come on and keep sharing our experiences, because if we all collectively do this together, something has to change. Some good has to come from it. And whether the good is just the good of us supporting each other, it's going to have a benefit. So Siobhan, you've mentioned Cree quite a few times. I'd like to maybe dive in. What help have they been able to give you?
Well, it was a nurse that came to me, and one of the times I was sent home again after coming in with really bad heart symptoms, and she said, contact Cree. And I never heard of them before. I was 34 at the time. You wouldn't see too many 34-year-olds in the Cree. It's more heart and stroke and heart attacks, and they're phenomenal. I contacted Annie, and there was a heart-to-heart lunch coming on for women, and I had seen it, and I had no ticket. And I rang Annie, and I was quite upset when I rang Annie, because at that point I was quite vulnerable and I had not been listened to. I was in an awful situation. And immediately she told me I was invited and I could bring someone with me, and I got to be part of the Cree community. And I stood towards the end and I saw my story, and people said that they couldn't believe what I had been through and to be able to tell my story. And after that then, I decided with Annie that I would do a small bit of advocacy work. And that's, like, they're brilliant. You can ring Annie anytime you want. And even when you're putting yourself out there, you're not professional enough to do it. You're professional enough to tell your own story, and nobody can take that away from you. But you always want to come across in the right way. So if I was ever doing an interview, I'd always contact Annie and I'd give her some things of what I wanted to say and do, and she would give me advice. But I've done a lot of volunteer work with them. I've done advocacy work with them. And the minute I walk in the door, everybody welcomes you. And it was such a lovely community that I'm delighted to be a part of, and I want to continue to be part of that. I think that's really important for me to have a place. There isn't a lot of services there I can do because of my criteria, like hearts and strokes and heart attacks and stuff like that. But they have fitness classes, they have yoga classes, they have counselling, they have unbelievable setup, and they do loads of events. And I was supposed to do the Dancing with the Stars event with them in November, but I had to pull out because of this surgery. It was more expensive than it was. So I was a bit disappointed by that, but they understood straight away. Like they were losing a dance. I will do it next year for sure. I just love it because you get to meet a lot of patients as well. That's similar to you in the sense with the heart. They can understand it, the struggles of it. For me, my heart was very erratic and had a scarring in it. So when your heart and the tissue of your heart is scarred, it affects the pumping mechanism of your heart. And that's what was really, really affecting me. But as my heart is healing, the scarring has diminished. And in my second cardiac MRI, it had showed that the scarring was diminishing. So I knew myself it was, because I could feel better and my symptoms were disappearing. So there's a lot. I think if you are quite vulnerable and you are living with a condition, I think you should link in with charities. I think they're really, really important. They're really part of your growth coming out of it, and the support there. And I think because of being able to tell my story, and they gave me a platform to do that, it has really branched out who I am today, for sure.
I think working with thank God these bodies exist, because they provide a bit of light in a very, very dark place. I know my own story, Crohn's Colitis Ireland, have just been an amazing support to me, just for letting you know information that's available, keeping you on top of different things that are coming out, and just even giving you the chance to advocate for yourself and speak in the media and different things like that. So yeah, it's amazing that the likes of Cree and Crohn's Colitis Ireland and all these other charitable organisations do exist. Is there any other bodies you've worked with apart from Cree?
Cry. So I do a lot with Cry Ireland as well. So they're the genetic form of the adult sudden death. And we got my screening there for the genetic testing. Because my heart was so erratic at the time, it was actually them that diagnosed me with myocarditis. They said, and every single test I did with them was free. I did echogram, stress test, cardiac MRI. I had 2 of them. Everything was done. They also gave me years counselling, because by the time I had got to Cry Ireland, I was misdiagnosed for a year and a half and I was in an awful state. So my mental health was really affected by it. I wasn't able to live independently at that point. I had to have somebody to stay with me. And I was very, very vulnerable. But the minute I linked in with them again, my life turned around. And we did family days out. They had different events for women and men that you could, and I still have friends from that. And I think that if there's anything wrong with me now, I would reach out to 2 people in particular, that if I had symptoms, if I wasn't feeling well, I would go to them first before I would go to anyone else, because number one, they might have an answer, and number 2, they would understand a bit better than talking to somebody else that may have only ever had a flu in their whole life. And again, you can't fault someone for not knowing. So I think it's very important to link in with these, because then you're linking in with patients that can help you more for the rest of your life. But it's also important not to stay on the negative side, that you do branch out. And that's what I was trying to do. Was this happened to me. It was very, very horrific. It really impacted my life, but I want to use it as a platform to tell my story and advocate for myself, in the sense that don't be afraid to ask for a second or third opinion, and try and advocate for yourself as best you can. But that was my aim, and continue to be my aim, that you can't stay down on the negative. What happened to me, not one person can change that now. Not one person can give me back the last 4 years of my life. But the only thing that I can take from it is that I am strong, I am resilient, I'm a great person, I'm a great mother, and I've been through the most horrific couple of years of my life. But I don't want to stay down on that. I don't want to be the poor me, the victim. I want to be like, this is what happened to me, and this is what I'm going to do going forward, and I'm going to try and make a change. And that's what I'm trying to focus on.
Percent, and fair play to you. You are an absolute amazing advocate after everything you've gone through, and to speak so well, to come and share your story and come back standing up straight. But I'm still here, I'm still fighting. I'm going to get past this. And obviously you have someone in your life that you have to look after. You have a child. My own experience, thankfully, I'm the only person that has to look after me. I don't have a dependent. So it must be a nightmare trying to, as you said, you were bedbound for a year.
I don't think I'd be as good as I am today only for him, because every single morning he needed to get him up in the morning to go to school. He needed his dinner. He needed to be brought places. It did make it obviously 100% more challenging, but it also got me out. Like, if I stayed down, I wouldn't be up today. A lot of people progress worse and they're in a wheelchair. There's some people with my condition in a wheelchair, and you have a choice. Either stay down, and sometimes you don't have that choice, just the way it is. But for me, I knew the only way for me to get better was to get moving and get my rehabilitation program and move forward. And every single day, I used to look at my son and I said, when he comes home from school, I'm going to be up. I'm going to have the dinner on, and I'm going to do the best I can. And it was difficult, because a lot of the times I had to leave him and go to the hospital. And the hardest part of leaving him is knowing that I was going into a hospital that wasn't going to do anything for me. And the impact of my illness and me being misdiagnosed on my son was massive, because at the end of the day, he didn't feel safe. Nothing in the world was safe to him, because the only person in his life was me. And so that's why, another reason why I'm trying to advocate, is because at the end of the day, it wasn't just me they failed, they also failed my little boy. And I eventually got a little monitor in the house. I don't know, you see it in the elderly people where it's a little red button, the care line. And this was brilliant. It's Callum knew, if anything. So once a week, he could press this button, and within seconds, he was talking to a health provider, an operator on the other side. So that gave us a lot of safety. Like, I'd shower stools, I'd railings in the house. Like for a 30-year-old lady, that is horrific to get to that point. And for my son to see me like that. But it was also very important for my son to see me come out of it. And that knowing that if he does have a bad time or a bad situation, that you do have to keep going. So I think my son has also learned resilience at a very young age, and to fight as well. So I probably spoil him a lot now, because I just think the unfairness of it. And I had a choice also. I could have been very bitter for what happened to me. And I just didn't want to be that type of a person. I was angry for a long time, because I was like, why me? Why? I've already been through enough before this. So I tried to not be bitter and to get myself up on it. And I did the Camino. I did the Camino last year for Cry Ireland. I walked like 125 kilometers. And my goal at that time was I was in bed 17 hours a day to be able to be fit enough to do the Camino. So I think it's important that I set goals for myself. And I was so proud at the end of it. I ended up in hospital for 4 days after it because it was severe on my body, but it was still amazing to do that. And for my son to see me do that, he's very proud. I'm incredibly proud of him. It is difficult because, of course, it'd be a lot easier if you only had yourself to look after, and you probably would have more time to heal, more time to just get through stuff, but you don't. So there is challenges there, but there's also, I don't believe I would be as well as I am or here today, only for my son, giving me the will to get up every day for him. And he knows that too.
Unfortunately, he's had an amazing education on what it is to be tough and to advocate for yourself. No education that anyone that age should have to get, but my God, will it stand to him as he gets older. But he's a great role model to look up to, so he's blessed in that sense.
He's brilliant.
It's amazing. And doing the Camino, I know if someone said to me, you can go, I'd love to do an ultramarathon, right? That's my goal. But if someone said to me, you can do the ultramarathon, you end up 4 days in hospital, I'm like, yeah, no problem, I'll still do it because it's a goal I have and it's something I want to achieve no matter what way my health manifests or gets in the way. But I think, like as you said, having a purpose, having a goal and making sure you don't become bitter, because bitter is poison. And it's very hard to not become bitter when you're experiencing these things. And unfortunately, we go on social media, we see how great, and I say this with inverted commas, everyone else is doing. Very easy to allow that into your life and become bitter, but bitterness is a poison. But fair play to you for, it's very hard to see out of that fog sometimes, and it's definitely a foggy place to be where you're looking for clarity.
There definitely was a time where I remember some guy came to the house and he didn't mean to do it at the time, and he said, it's very sad you'll never get to go on holidays again, because at the moment there was no view to an answer or no view to it getting better. And I remember when he left, I was so upset, and I thought, F him, I'm going to go on holidays. And I did. So there's always something inside of me. And I think because of the fact that when I did get diagnosed, it was a great, I don't know, was it a relief? I cried the day they rang me in Dublin Hospital and they told me there was something wrong with me, because then it just proved that the other 10 doctors that ignored me were wrong. But I didn't want it to be very bad. And I was scared when they told me I had scarring of the heart, because then at that point, they didn't know if it was cardiomyopathy, which was the dangerous genetic gene of the heart. So I had to wait for my genetic testing to come back. And I had to wait 4 months, I think it's 6 months, for the genetic testing of the heart to come back. But like, again, all these tests, why aren't we tested at birth? Like, there's so many people dying from sudden death. People blame the vaccine and something like that. I didn't even take the vaccine. I didn't take one vaccine. And I think everyone has an opinion. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff, if you were born in America, when you're born, the minute you're born, you get a heel prick test. But it's tested for all these genetic conditions. And that's the way it should be here in Ireland, because at the end of the day, there'd be no sudden deaths or no SADs if they were tested at birth. And a lot of kids in America now are given the heart medication at birth because it's shown at birth. So like, for me, it just baffles me how we're so backwards here. CRY do phenomenal work, but that's all charity based. That's seen that we need to investigate sudden deaths in Ireland, and they have done phenomenal work with families. But if this test was done at birth, it would have saved a lot of people. Like, even screening for hearts. I know last year a guy collapsed, and it was found out that he had only 3 valves instead of 4. So we're born with 4 valves, but he went to the age of 50 with 3. And again, if he was screened at birth, it would have shown that a lot of stuff can be preventable here in Ireland. And that's the whole point of doing the advocacy work and trying to campaign for women's health, is that if things were put in place, we would never progress as bad as, there wouldn't be as many diseases if things were done to preventable measure.
Yeah, I think that's a massive problem. On the foundational level, there seems to be so much missing. Like, early intervention in absolutely any case is key to prevention of further symptoms. I don't know, I've put my hands up, I don't know much about the heart and sudden death. I obviously know the problems that exist from it, but like, as you say there, if this exists in another healthcare system, why don't we have it here? Like, we are a first world country, we're very rich, we have very educated people. What's going wrong here? Like, it just seems like madness.
But it's until somebody stands up and decides that we need to do or shout about it. So I wouldn't have known about it, only for I had to be in the system for it. And that's the thing, a lot of people. And then sometimes I would say it and people would be like, what's she raving about? People are so convinced that it's the vaccines, but it's not. Like, sudden death has been around for years. Vaccines did cause a lot of hassle with the hearts, but it's education as well and awareness. That's the bigger factor of it. So when I was sick that time, when I was asking for a fund for the charities, you to raise, I think 4,000 or 5,000, I think I raised for it. But I went to the schools, and I went to probably 6 schools to ask them to do no uniform day. Only one of them agreed to do it, and the man was lovely. And the reason why he agreed to do it is because his daughter had open heart surgery. So there's always a connection with when you're telling your story, who's going to listen. It's because of how they have been impacted by the particular story you're going to tell. So it's a big thing. Why can't you have an open mind or a bit of empathy to deal with? It doesn't have to be just because I have it. It should be just because you want to make a difference.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate lesson that it seems people have to learn before they can be empathetic. And I would love if people didn't have to learn lessons to be empathetic, because it'd be great if none of us had to learn these lessons to be more caring to one another and give each other more options. Like the fact that, I don't know what the school system is like. But you'd imagine that there would have been more forthcoming about a new uniform day. I don't understand what would be so impactful about, oh God, we're raising money so you don't have to wear a uniform. Surely it's a good thing for the kids. Every kid loves it.
Yeah. I find it even in my son's school that there's a lack of awareness here and a lack of empathy, considering with certain things that have arisen with the school, and like my son was bullied and stuff like that. But you'd think that they know a bit about it, but they don't really understand until you actually have to shout at them and tell you this. Like we are struggling here. We needed more support in the school. It shouldn't have been such a big challenge for the school as well. And now, thankfully, it is in place for Callum, but it should have been automatically given to him, considering they knew the background and the situations we were going through. But I find that nothing is given to you for anything. You have to fight for everything. And nobody will ring you up and say, do you realize that you're sick with this condition? You can get this, or you get that, or you get the other. It's not done. It's not done. It's only from talking to other people that have conditions that obviously give you, and people telling their story, where you can get more information. Like, are you familiar with some?
Yeah, only from speaking to Sarah O'Connor, who was previously on the podcast. She has MS and Crohn's disease. So like yourself, she's dealing with multiple problems and trying to navigate that. That was the first time I heard of it, but like a great tool for people to use, because...
But it's only a great tool if the person that you're interacting with knows about it as well, you see. There's not enough awareness for it. When I wore it a lot at the start, some man actually said to me, he goes, do you have autism? He was trying to whisper to me. So... I was like, no, I don't, I said. And then I kind of walked away and I started laughing. I just thought, well, again, it's the lack of awareness. I can't fault him if he thinks that's what it is, because he doesn't know.
At least he asked, at least he didn't just ignore it. At least he wanted to be like, I need to learn here. I think it was great to see that man was probably open to speak it. But in the same sense, I didn't know about the sunflower lanyard until she spoke it on, I think it was episode 3 she was on. So there is really a lack of awareness of these supports. But as you said, thank God we have social media and the mediums like podcasts now, because someone listening who might not know now has that information. And I think the more we shout and the more we put ourselves forward to share all this information, the more good can come from it. But as you said, no one's going to ring you up to tell you what you're entitled to, or maybe some route that you should go. But at least now you could go in, maybe Google, like I couldn't Google Crohn's on TikTok, and someone will come up and speak about it. So it's great to share the information we have so that we can educate each other.
Like, in other sense, what has made your condition the most challenging is people not understanding it and not enough awareness about it. I look physically healthy now, but you would never know that I need to sit down. Like, I have a venous pooling condition in my legs. But if I went up to another person, they'd think there's nothing wrong with that one. She's not getting my seat. So this is another, I don't have it with me. I have a little badge because I have the loop accordion ring for my heart. It's like a little chip in my heart that it tracks every single heartbeat. So that should have been given me a lot sooner than it was. But when I changed cardiologists, I was given to it. So that chips every single heartbeat I do, whether it's irregular or not, the hospital will contact me and tell me. And if it needs to be intervened, it can be intervened within hours. And it's really, really good. And I got a card for that. And I feel like even in Ireland, there should be a disability card where you can literally have it. Because do you have one for Crohn's?
Most Galway Ireland have a no wait card should you need to use a bathroom in a public setting where maybe it says toilets are for customers only, or there's no easily accessible toilets. You can show your card and people will have an understanding without you having to go blabbing your life story to them. So that has been an amazing tool for a lot of people. But as you said, just like that, there needs to be more tools available.
Overall one, where you don't have to disclose your disability, that it's physically there, that anyone that has this has a disability, and that's all you need to know. You find some people are great because they might have a family member or a sister or something that can see it. But a lot of people, I find, even traveling on the trains to Dublin, I go to the hospital a good bit, and it actually annoys me because the disability area, my son had to use a wheelchair because of his ankles, but he's not wheelchair bound. He had to get both his legs casted, and it really opened my eyes to when we were on the train. Always, there's 2 seats on the train from Galway to Dublin for accessibility wheelchair users, and they're always full to the rim with suitcases. So I didn't pass any romance to this before until I had to bring my son to his hospital appointment in a wheelchair. And it delayed the train by 10 minutes because it's basically on the wall. This is wheelchair accessibility area. But people honestly didn't care. They were like, well, I'm going to put my bag here and I'm going to go off back to my seat. And at this point, then the train was really, really packed. And I just thought, oh my God, imagine a mother bringing their child every couple of weeks up to Dublin Hospital for a condition. And the first thing they had to do, and the anxiety that would bring, and the sadness to know that their biggest challenge is going to be other people's awareness that I need to bring my child onto it. And there were signs there saying this is just a bit wheelchair accessibility. Please don't put your suitcases down, to do it anyway. I seen a girl having a seizure on the train last year as well because the accessibility area on the train, the priority area, was taken over by normal. Do you know what I mean? People that had no conditions. And it wasn't available. So she asked a person, could she sit down? The person said no. And she's literally collapsed on the floor a couple of seconds later and started seizing. And like, if this area was available to her, number one, she basically was obviously knew it was coming that she asked for the seat, and she shouldn't have asked for the seat. It should have been properly available to her. And I literally couldn't believe it, that she had to go through that, and then the whole train looking at her. Season, whether if she wasn't put in such a vulnerable situation, maybe she wouldn't have had a seizure. Maybe if she was sitting down in the seat comfortably, we wouldn't have come to that. I just think there is a lack of awareness in Ireland for people with disabilities, or a lack of empathy, or people just don't care. As long as they get a seat and they're happy, they're not thinking about anybody else.
Yeah, the lack of empathy for each other is unfortunately just a horrible part of modern society. And in the same sense, wouldn't it be great if there was a, as you said, lanyard you could wear? But in another sense, why do you have to wear a label so someone could be empathetic towards you when you actually ask a question and say, oh, would you mind if I took a seat? Unfortunately, that girl had such a terrible experience and like all the things that come with it, the embarrassment, the feeling of shame, like that just ruined her day and whatever amount of days she may have after that because of maybe a lack of empathy. So it's just horrible. And I feel...
Sorry for cutting you again. The only piece of advice I gave to her when she came around is like, you need to start advocating for yourself properly. You need to, because you can't put yourself in that situation again. You're entitled to that seat. If she doesn't get offered, you get a member of staff to get her to get offered. And that's just the way it has to be. She could see, really hurt herself. I felt really sad. I felt really, really sad that if somebody had asked me for a seat, the way I view the world is, I'd be like, they're asking for a reason. They really are. They're not asking because they couldn't be arsed sitting down on the floor or standing. So it's just, again, it's my view. Obviously, because of what I've been through, I have a different view of the world. I don't know. It's quite sad what we have to go through as well.
Yeah, I feel people are so lucky to have that level of ignorance in their mind, because obviously if they have that level of ignorance, they've never been educated to have that ignorance changed. And how blessed are they that that's not the life they've had to live.
Yeah.
But surely from knowing what's out there, I just don't understand. I don't understand because I understand, of course. So that's the main problem.
That is true. But do you find it even with family and friends that some I would have detached from a little bit, because it was quite exhausting trying to have to explain yourself the whole time, because I'd suffer the most at the moment with chronic fatigue. So like even going out and nights out, I'm always the first person home, and going to events, I would have to organise it a lot different than anybody else. But I find that sometimes the biggest challenge is getting the person you're going with to understand that you do need that extra little bit of care. Sometimes, not all the time, most people are really, really good, but I do find that it's very hard and very exhausting when you are physically look well to explain to somebody that you need a bit of help, or that you're just a nuisance sometimes.
I've actually been very lucky in this sense. Like I've had very supportive friends all the time, and my extended family have been so good. Like even, for example, my auntie and uncle last night had their 50th wedding anniversary, and they used the opportunity, rather than gifts, that people would donate to Crohn's and Colitis Ireland. So I know how blessed I've been from the goodness of people, but this definitely seems to be a main thing, is that since I started speaking openly on social media, so much of my family would say, we knew you were sick, but we didn't really realize what you were going through. And I think that's why speaking on social media and obviously being open with the people around us, it gives them the opportunity to learn so they can be more empathetic towards us. Whereas I feel if they don't have an understanding, that's where this lack of empathy or this lack of, care or understanding of what you're going through comes. So I think definitely being more open with people. And then if they're not caring after that, that's obviously a them problem. And I
Yeah,
feel
I
sorry
agree.
for them.
I agree. When I came out first with my first story, it was on the Connacht Tribune, and I think for a full month there wasn't a person that didn't stop me every day of the week to say to me again what you said. We knew you were sick, but we didn't realize what you went through, because I didn't tell a lot of people, in the sense that I actually didn't even know what was going on with me anyway to tell them. But and I just wasn't seen. So people that I'd moved away and different things like that. But I found as if you are telling your story and people are aware of it and still don't have any empathy for you, that's one lesson I have learned, that those people don't belong in your world. And that's definitely on them. I 100% agree with you. But I think sometimes it can be the hardest challenge to try and get somebody to really, really zone in on what you're going through and really, really feel it. Definitely.
I think it's so important to be very open and sometimes overshare, because without oversharing, how will someone really know what you've gone through? Like, oh, you're sick. We knew you were in hospital. We didn't realize you were on death's door, because it's not something you're not going to usually walk outside and go straight oversharing with people because you feel like maybe you're burdening them with it, or you're going to sound like you're always complaining and whining. But you have to just give people the understanding of what's going on. And as you said then, or as I said, if they don't have an understanding, then cut the fat, right? You don't need to be in my life anymore,
Yeah,
because you're
I
no
definitely learned. I'm
benefit.
thinking a little bit different now. I appreciate, like, even after the surgery, to be able to go for a walk, because when you come around from the abdomen surgery, you can't walk straight for a long time. And to be able to walk with the freedom of straightening yourself up is like nobody else will understand that. And I've had to do that 5 times for 5 surgeries, but also when I was bedbound. I remember the first walk I did, it was behind my house. I walked for 10 minutes in circles, and every day I said, I'm not doing that tomorrow. That was terrible. But we have a will to live, I think, when we have been through we have a different will to live. I think
Oh,
so.
yeah.
I live my life very differently. I try and just do things. And I think when you sit while you're doing the things, you take them in a lot different than you would have been. You take them for granted, I think. And I think that's how I've learned to live my life now, that you just embrace everything and you just think everything is amazing because you're lucky to be able to do it. So.
To appreciate the small things. I know there's a question, and I'm going to put it to you as well. Everyone that I ask that comes on to this podcast, I say, what does happiness mean to you? And the majority of people will say it's the little things. It's being able to go for the walks. It's being able to spend time with family. It's being able to appreciate things, because you know what it's like to be bedbound and to have the simplest thing like going for a walk and smelling the roses,
Yeah.
taken away from you. But I suppose this is going to lead me into my question. Like, going forward and everything you've experienced and the education you've unfortunately had to receive from life, what does happiness look like to you?
I think for a lot of it, your spark goes. I think while you're trying to advocate for yourself, while you're trying to get the care that you deserve and living with the conditions, I think your spark goes. So I think as you start to slowly come out of it, especially with this surgery, the first 2 weeks, I was a bit like, I'm struggling here. And I think for that, once you start to come out of it, your spark comes back. For me, it's getting my spark back gives me the greatest happiness, because when you get a pep in your step and you think, oh, I'm coming back from this. I think that's really, really lovely, because not everyone will understand that either. But when you start to get your spark back and you stand for a moment and you think, God, look at all I've been through, but I'm still here. That gives me great happiness. Being with my son gives me great happiness. Being away from the hospital gives me great happiness. Like the water of the beach, the ocean. There's such a calmness about it. I love that. Just to live happy, like knowing that my health is improving and hopefully not to be able to go back to that quite vulnerable, sick state again. I think that's the greatest gift you can be given, is your health, like a really good health. Just enjoy myself. I think that's really, really important. And to know now by telling my story that somebody is getting a small bit of hope from me speaking and how I speak and knowing what I've come back from, I think that gives me great happiness as well. It gives you a great purpose as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I
And
know
knowing
a previous guest, Ellie House, said that hope was better than any medication. because it
Yeah,
kept her going through the hardest times. I thought it was just a beautiful way to view hope, because sometimes hope, you hope, and then you get bad news and you think you're cursing the hope that came before. But then hope comes back in and it gives you that bit of gumption and that bit of power to keep going through what you're going through. So
definitely. Because if I was bedbound again, looking at myself doing this TikTok, I'd be like, Siobhan, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. And I think that's what we lose sight of when we're in the middle of it, because there is a great fear that you'll never come out of it. Even with the surgery, week 2, I was sleeping all the time. Like my fatigue was solid, really bad. And I thought, am I going to come out of this again? Am I just going to keep getting more and more fatigued and keep going down? And I think that's been the biggest challenge is to come over that again. The happiness you get when you do come over that, I think, is phenomenal, because there's a big smile on your face after 6 weeks, and you think, geez, at 2 weeks I thought I was going to go down. So, and
yeah,
that's like, it's very little that makes me happy. Like, no, it's very little that doesn't make me happy, in the sense that I think I'm a lot more happier by the little achievements because of what I've been through. Like, and I sit with my son. When my son goes to bed every night, I smile at him, because he's the most amazing little young lad. And to see that, like, we've been through so much, the two of us, and we are still rocking it. And there's so many people that probably think we'd fail or we wouldn't do well, especially when you are being a single mother. And when his dad left, like, he made that choice to leave and I made the choice to stay. And we had a very difficult, but there is something so special about that bond that me and my son have. Because even with the endometriosis, the consultant told me I had a 4% chance of having a child. And I remember when I found out I was pregnant, I was so petrified. And we only spoke about it last night. Callum asked about his birth, and he laughed so much because he was the ugliest baby that ever came out. And he thought it was so funny. He goes, was I really ugly? I said, for about 12 hours, you were the ugliest thing I ever seen. And he thought it was so funny. And my sister used to call him Benjamin Button, because, like, I thought he is the ugliest baby I've ever seen. To tell him that story last night, and the way he looked up at me, and he thought it was so funny, because he's gorgeous. He's big, long eyelashes, his brown eyes, but they came back to him out. So his head was very funny, but he was so proud to hear how he was born yesterday, and it was so lovely to share that with him. So that gives me great joy. Like, if you hear him laugh, he laughs so well. But when you're in the middle of being sick, you don't hear those laughs from either of us, because he's wondering, is my mum going to be all right? My mum going to come out of this? Am I going to come out of this? And I thought yesterday was a brilliant evening. Two of us sharing that story of how he was born. I thought it was brilliant. I think to hear those laughs again, and your little spark coming back, I think that's class.
it's amazing. And what an amazing young man to still laugh.
He's
Mammy's
so
miracle
funny.
baby.
Yeah, but he's so funny. He's so me, because I know when I'm not well, I have a great sense of humor. I think that's what's kept me going all these years. And I look at him and I think, oh my God, he's just a little me. And he's so funny. And I think when that comes back into somebody's home, I think it's a wonderful place to be in. For
Oh
sure, yeah.
yeah, laughter feeds the soul, and obviously
Yeah,
humor is a coping mechanism as well.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. But no, it's absolutely beautiful to hear that. Kind of, we'll just head to final thoughts.
My final thoughts would be that I hope that by us all speaking out, it will instill some sort of change in our healthcare. I hope that all these ministers who really think about the impact they are having on people's lives, that it is very real. I think we all have one life to live, and I think we deserve to live it the best we can with the minimum amount of challenges. I feel most of my challenges are there from somebody else's not doing their job or somebody else failing us. I think when I look back at the last 10 years, I think a lot of my heartache is from a failed system. Imagine how less my life would have been difficult if the system was a lot easier for us to be in. So I think that is something that people need to really home in on and really see the impact they have. And I think they'll never know the impact people are having if people don't share their story. So I think if anyone takes anything from me, is that you can come out of any situation you're in. And I think if you are bedbound and you see no hope, I think there is hope from me. Find a way to get yourself out of that situation. Like, I met a guy one day at the train station, and he was like so drunk and he'd become homeless. And I didn't even know him, but I just felt sorry for him. And I said, You find a way out of this. And I remember the train driver or the guy in the train station said, he goes, "Can't believe the way you just spoke to them, like in such a positive way." And I said, if somebody had tipped me on the shoulder 3 years ago and said, "You find a way out of this, you get yourself back," and that small little tip on the shoulder wouldn't it have made it a little bit. It's a start. All you need is a small bit of hope. And I think if you can offer that to somebody, I think it's phenomenal. I think I'm going to stay sharing my story. I do laugh sometimes that as I get on from talking, I feel like I'm getting thicker as the day goes on. But that's the brain fog. It's kind of living with your condition. So
Yeah.
some people don't get it, but I still try and speak as well as I can. I just think find some way of coming back out of it and look for support. Even if you don't get it off the people that you think you need it from, there's always somebody there to support you, even if it's a stranger, a helpline, anybody. Like, I think if you're not getting the support that you think you deserve and that's what's really holding you back, just look for it somewhere else. I think there's always somebody there to listen to you. Even me, like I am there if somebody ever wants to message me about anything. I think that's really important to know that there's somebody there to help you as well. Just live your life well. Just because we are given these labels as conditions, it doesn't mean their life is over. Like, I live my life the new normal way. And I think once you learn to accept that, life gets a lot easier, for sure. So I'm very proud of
Definitely.
myself.
You should be, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're an absolute powerhouse to go through what you went through and now advocate so strongly and speak so unbelievably well, and to share your story. You are.
I think it's important to remember as well that, say if you don't want to tell your story because you're afraid of other people's opinion, just do it anyway. Because I think that's what held me back telling my story, because I was afraid to publicize myself in the sense that you were afraid of being judged. I think, and then when I did it and everyone was hugging me and telling me that they're sorry, like it empowers you to keep doing it when you do get such a lovely response from it. Don't let anyone stop you from telling your story or doing anything in your life. I think that's really important as well.
What my mother said to me, she said, "What someone else thinks of you is none of your business." And it's
Yes,
something
that
that
is true. That is true. Your
So I
mother is
think that
smart.
she's a smart lady. She dragged me up, so she did, through everything, and I like that. I have a great relationship with my mother, the same way you have a relationship with your son. I think it's a beautiful thing to have someone in your life who can support you, and it goes vice versa. You know, to love and to learn from each other. Like, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story, Siobhan. It has been unbelievably insightful, and I have to say, from listening to everything you've gone through, you truly are an inspirational woman, and I really hope that there are much brighter days ahead.
Thank you. And well done for setting up this. You're giving a platform to anyone that's in a vulnerable situation or living with a condition to tell their story. So there's a lot to be proud of there as well for yourself. So well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that as a platform, I think giving a voice to people who feel voiceless is something that just has to be done, you know, to come on, so we can all share our story, add weight to each other's voices, and through the power of collaboration. Like, I call this a project because a project is a collaboration of people. And I want this to be a collaboration that everyone can come on and we can advocate, and eventually the voices will get louder and stronger the more people come and speak. So thank you so much for coming on.
For sure. Just before we go, I haven't seen any support groups for activities. And there's one thing that I was trying to set up is it's like an Instagram page. So do you know the way we live with certain conditions and we wouldn't be able to do the normal stuff everyone else is able to do. And I felt there was a gap there. Like, it can't be a place to go and kind of talk about your condition. I want it to be a place that you can separate from it and be around people that's yourself and be in a community that's orientated to our needs. Because I tried to do hiking with a group before and I was lagging behind, and I felt it was really challenging in the sense that I was trying to go with people on the normal scale of things. So if anybody wants to join something like that, I am trying to set it up at the moment. It's Let's Enjoy Life Community. So if you or anyone that wants to do like activities like saunas, cold water therapy, the cinema, night out, meetups, stuff like that, with anybody living with a hidden disability, I just would like to invite you to that as well.
It's an amazing initiative to set up, and I'll happily share it 100%. I'll add, have you social set up for it?
I have, but again, I'm no expert on this, but I'm an expert on our own bodies and how we live. But I found that there were so many events I would love to go to, but because of my fatigue and because of my conditions, I would not go to them. And I think we're all too young to not be living the way we should be living. So it's something that if anyone else even wants to help out and help organise it, because I'm not used to doing that, but I just felt that we need somewhere to be to feel a bit normal and be around people that can understand it. Because I would prefer to go on a hike with you than go on a hike with my friend that's physically fit, because we could support each other. So I think that's something I would like to set up for sure.
Definitely, absolutely, and I happily share until it gets set up, and I'll make sure and share it on the socials so that if anyone wants to reach out to you, they have your socials and can get something going. Because I think going to a place where someone has a complete understanding that you might be a bit tired, you might just need to take a seat for a bit, someone who's empathetic, because they might be feeling the same 10 minutes later or 10 minutes before. So it's going to people who really understand your situation, so we can all enjoy life as we're supposed to.
For sure, yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
That was episode 10 of the Survival Project. Siobhan's story is one of the strongest examples of resilience that I've ever heard. Survived misdiagnosis, major complications, years of being dismissed, and an actual complete collapse in her health. Yet her story is one of courage, it's one of empathy, and she shows her desire to help others. If you're still here, thank you so much for joining the conversation, and feel free to add your voice in the comments. Next week's episode will be number 11. It's going to be an episode of reflection that'll just recap on the main nuggets from each episode that has come before. Thanks again for being here, and stay tuned.